Anti-Drones Network, and we are a task force of United for Justice with Peace, and we're putting on this event tonight along with Arlington UJT. And our network works to raise awareness about the drone assassination program of our government, especially emphasizing the civilian casualties, people who have nothing to do with fighting against the U.S., but also objecting to the way our government targets people who are fighting against the U.S. with no due process. They just say, get that one, and we don't think that's how we should be operating our foreign policy. So we organize educational events like tonight, and we organize demonstrations, all in an effort to raise awareness about this really new and very terrible way of waging war. I mean, they shouldn't be waging war in the first place, but much less by remote killing. We're going to show excerpts from the movie Drone tonight, and then we'll hear from Christopher Aaron, who's an ex-drone analyst, and he'll be telling us what it was like working inside this program and why he quit. We invite you all to get involved. We have a sign-up sheet on the table over there, and we'd love to put you on our list for information about events like this, and add a note if you'd like to find out about meetings and get involved and help us organize what to do about this. So let's watch. I'm very happy that we have Christopher Aaron with us tonight. He was a drone analyst, former counterterrorism officer for the CIA and Department of Defense. He worked mostly on the drone, Predator drone and satellite reconnaissance programs. He deployed twice to Afghanistan and Iraq from 2006 to 2009, serving as a liaison between special operations and the intelligence community in Washington. He quit in 2009 due to ethical concerns. He's from the Boston area, and after a few years overseas, he's now back in eastern Massachusetts. Thanks for being here, Christopher.
Thank you for having me. I wanted to say thank you to the Massachusetts Anti-Drone Network. The support has been really wonderful. I've only been speaking about my experiences overseas for about the last year. Brandon, who you saw in this video, has been speaking for a year or two prior to me, and we're being represented by the same group of attorneys in Washington. And I'm very thankful for him also, as well as a few of the other Air Force enlisted personnel who began to speak about this in the last several years, because I have to say I have no intention of pulling an Edward Snowden, so to speak. I don't think the best use of my abilities and time left on this planet is going to be to have to hide in an airport in Moscow and send, remote pieces to the rest of the world. There are things that I want to do, and there are things that I want to share, but I have no intention of revealing anything classified that I experienced. So thank you again. My name is Christopher Aaron. So I worked on the drone program. I was in the intelligence community for 5 years, from the mid-2000s through 2009. And 2 of those years were at the CIA for the drone program, and then I was also working on the satellite reconnaissance programs. And I did deploy, as Susan said, twice, once each to Iraq and Afghanistan during this time. And I was really part of the generation that grew up. I was a junior in college on September 11th, so I grew up with that as my backdrop, if you will, as I emerged into my career. And I remember very distinctly feeling at the time that I wanted to do something that would matter for my generation, or to make an impact in the way that I had an ideological view of my grandfather who fought in World War II in Europe. And I saw this as my opportunity to do something similar. Even though I didn't want to join the military itself, I wanted to do something that would help our country. And so I found my way into this program, and through my deployments and through my time there, I began to have, it was a slow but sure awakening. There was never one specific moment where I began to see more clearly what was actually happening and the ramifications, but it was a series of events over the course of my early career at these agencies. And we were targeting, as they said in the video, some of the high-level Taliban and Al-Qaeda leaders with the Predator drone programs. So we would take a drone, and through working with the Air Force, through a lot of the contracting agencies, through other branches of the military, this is one of the things that they mentioned in the video, that the control structure is very dispersed. There are control bases in Germany. There are control bases at Creech Air Force Base in Nevada, et cetera, et cetera. So Brandon, who was shown in the video, was the one, for example, in this instance, holding the joystick and deciding where to press the button and where to drop that joystick and where to shoot the missile. We were the ones telling Brandon where to point the joystick. And then, of course, there were people in our chain of command who were telling us what to focus on for a specific amount of time. There were people in the field sending information to those people about what they were experiencing, the covert ops, et cetera, et cetera. So there's this whole really diverse and decentralized state of command for this entire program. And I really began to see with my own eyes, especially into my second deployment, 2008 and 2009, I began to see that there was actually a significant lack of progress being made. There were more terrorist attacks happening on the bases in Afghanistan. There were more suicide bombers blowing themselves up. Our maps that took account of areas of Afghanistan that were in U.S. control in 2006 and 2007, we had less control of the countries in 2008 and 2009. What did I notice that we had more control of was the infrastructure on the base. McDonald's and Burger King and Pizza Hut sprouting up places on the base, new roads, new places for people to sleep, et cetera, et cetera. But as far as the objectives of winning the war, even if one believes the official point of the war, which is to get the terrorists, even if one believes that, we were failing at that. And then, of course, there is the whole question of, is that really the right strategy in the first place? I began to see this idea that they mentioned. Again, there's so many themes in this movie that really resonate with me. This theme of perpetual war, perpetual conflict, that every time we shoot a missile at someone in one of these small villages, we have to think about it from their standpoint. And so yes, even if this person is a senior Taliban member or a senior Al-Qaeda member, when we, even with these precision strikes, go in and take out this person, what is the effect that has on the rest of the village? What is the effect that has on the children who grow up around this individual? And they're being taught, for example, this could be a teacher, and we would observe the school children gathering around their teacher in the middle of a field, and they teach at these madrasas, especially in Waziristan, the eastern part of Afghanistan, across the border into Pakistan. They teach at these madrasas, and these are these religious schools where you have a group of 10 to 15 young boys between the ages of 8 and 13 years old, and they're being taught by this individual. We're at war with the United States. Americans hate us. This is how things are. And then suddenly, one day, when the individual goes into the field, all of a sudden he's blown up with a missile when he's away from the school kids. So either they see this, or this perhaps happens overnight when he goes out to relieve himself in the field, and we blow him up in the middle of the night. And so the next day, when the kids go back to school, suddenly the entire prophecy is true. Everything has come true as far as what these kids know. And that is the truth. I do believe to some extent the reality that we live in is subjective based on our experiences. So from their standpoint, everything that they've been taught is true and the prophecy has come true. And so we are sowing the seeds. Every time we even go after one of these legitimate quote-unquote targets, we are perpetuating the next round of the war. So really what I'm speaking about, it's not to get into so much the individual technology, the classified sides of the technology. It's not to get into the individual missions, because that will end my ability to speak very quickly. But what I can do is say that I saw the war firsthand from someone who went in with a patriotic mindset, and I really had my eyes open that we were doing more harm than good over the course of 2006 through 2009. So they showed the graph of the increased number of strikes. I began the program in 2006. We were having several strikes, every couple of weeks, and things picked up and got more and more intense, like I said, through 2009. And at that point, we were beginning to hear the rhetoric of let's have an official withdrawal from Iraq, for example, or a transfer of control over to Iraq. We were starting to hear things like that. But as we should all know, the violence has just intensified. Even if a significant number of the soldiers have been withdrawn, there remain tens of thousands of contractors who are fighting alongside the soldiers. So the idea that the wars are drawing down, that we've accomplished something there, is just a complete fallacy, no matter what the numbers of the official enlisted military that are overseas says. The attitude from the military, if you can imagine, they showed the black and white video feeds that was similar to what we were looking at. We would be studying pattern of life analysis for anywhere from a few hours to a few months. And you're sitting in a room not unlike this, staring at these video screens for 12 hours at a time, multiple days in a row. And there were a number of times where we frankly didn't know if we were looking at a compound that might have innocent women or children in it, or if they were a legitimate target inside. And the attitude from the military, who was overseeing even the CIA side of things from the technology standpoint, was generally, if we don't know, that's not an acceptable answer. They wanted some sort of an answer. So if we had to guess, if we were looking at children, or if we were looking at chicken running around in a field, we went ahead and guessed. And that was better from our standpoint as people who were recently out of college, looking to start our careers, couldn't afford to be out of work, living in Washington, D.C. So there's this whole intertwined series of messes there with the program that is really self-perpetuating. And I really began to resonate with the idea that was proposed by Orwell in 1984, this idea of perpetual war that he warned us about, that really if we were to step back and actually look at what we are doing, what the Western governments and the NATO powers are doing, it's really not so much about a winnable objective. It's really about keeping the war going in and of itself for political, for monetary means, for control means. And as a rational thinking individual who went into this, who was accepted into the CIA's analyst program for the drones, this is the only conclusion that I was able to arrive at. There was no other way for me to take the set of facts that I was seeing and to arrive at something that says, well, yes, everyone is just really miscalculating, or we're just pursuing the wrong strategy. This is not what occurred to me through my own experience, through my own two eyes. It really occurred to me that there are interests within the military and the contracting and the political structure that have an interest in keeping this country at war. And as they said in the video, terrorism provides the perfect excuse for continued strikes and continued seeding of the next year's war. And I did see with my own two eyes as well some of the human side of the wars. We would fly into some of the outlying bases, and I would see the children who were living in these remote areas, and they would run alongside the plane as we were landing, waving scarves, and it was just very clear that they were excited to see an airplane land, perhaps for the first time. I would go to the bazaar and the local market where they would let people onto the base and interact with some of the people, and they sell woodworking and pottery and scarves, and you don't feel that you're looking into the eyes of the enemy when you look at these people. You feel as though you're looking at human beings who are on another side of the planet, who are living lives in vastly different ways from us, but who are being pushed into a certain pattern of behavior based on now what we are doing to them. So I would say, and this is, I'm increasingly sharing my experience now because it is a very dark experience, and it took me a number of years to arrive at a point of being able to share this. I wasn't able to speak about this for about 5 years because I went through a whole series of PTSD-like related experiences, except that I wasn't actually on the ground shooting people. I was doing it remotely, and so my brain was left to fill in the missing pieces in my dreams and whatnot. And this took me a number of years to work through and to go through the feelings of guilt and remorse and quasi-suicidal ideology. And I arrived at a point, though, where I said, okay, so what can I do with this? What can I do with this information? And I realized that, for example, one of the statistics that really blew my mind was that even today, as majority opinion in the United States has turned against the wars overall, still the majority of Americans are in favor of the drone strikes, as if those are separate from the wars. And there's this idea that the drone strikes are really being this incredibly precision, targeted system that's being each one signed off by President Obama, and that's a necessary evil. And I feel that I am here to share another side of that, and to express that from my personal experience, that is not nearly what is happening. This is not a precision bad guy killing tool. This is really a tool to continue the next year's war. And whatever I suffered is only a fraction of what the people on the ground in Afghanistan and Pakistan have suffered as related to this. So I do feel like there is something that we can do, and that's why I'm really honored to have the opportunity to speak and to be part of this group here, because if we can all share with one or two other individuals some of this side of the story and start to change public opinion and at least begin a dialogue with some of our politicians. Right now, no politicians are even willing to engage in a dialogue about this program. So there is something we can do. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I'm not here just to confess. I've done that over the last few years. I am here because I think there is something that we can do, and this is not over. And so I do thank you for the opportunity to share this experience that I have had, and I would like to see if there are any questions about either the movie or my side of things as well. Thank you. Yes.